Good morning, India. This is my first time in this country, so thank you for hosting me and having me here. So I'd like to share with you my perspective on what humane design is and how I perceive design and its role in humanity. When I first got asked this question to come and share with you all what was humanizing design, I actually instinctively went to respect, love, collaboration, which I think are all good principles that we do and should, as designers and as creators, embrace. But I came to realize quickly that we also have design that is structured, that is created, that actually does not purvey love and does not bring about cohesiveness or collaboration. So what is it about human first? I came to realize that what we all share as humans, whether we use design for good, for respect, or for collaboration or not, is the fact that we have choice. And I think this is really the foundation that shapes everything that we create, and indeed, in my case, has shaped my experience. We all, as humans, share one unique and distinct factor. We are creative beings. And this means within us, we have vision, which we can act out. This vision, when perfected, when repeated, when mastered, becomes skill. And this skill is what gives us these titles of designer, architect, artist, whatever you have mastered or whatever you have refined. What separates the artist from the human is simply repeating and perfecting the skill. But we all in here have power to create, to shape, and to design. I took that thought a bit further and considered, what end does this serve? And that brought me back to my idea of respect and collaboration. Of course, that's what we all would like. But really, I believe design is to serve. Design is in service. And as was mentioned earlier already this morning, design is a means to bring about solution. But that very solution is actually created to serve, again, humanity. I see this as an interconnected loop. We have the human who has choice, where we all are. And from that, we have those of us in here who have chosen to master skill in design and through tools and technology in order to serve. It is actually a connected loop. I call this model humane design. And after thinking about it, I think when we start from this point, we get to the point of humanized design. That means design that in its creative essence and core serves humanity through technology and skill. Why do I emphasize the human first? And why do I emphasize choice first? Because we each in here can shape and influence. When designing to solve, I believe it's very important to start from the point and the perspective of solution. That is the point and the perspective of service. It is not about starting from the perspective of the individual or the technology. When we start with service of humans and work backwards to create and develop solutions that meet the end, we have fulfilled what I believe is healthy, humane design. When we fail to do this, and there are examples which sometimes for good or bad, we choose to start for design from the technology or the skill perspective. The danger in this is you miss the problem entirely. and try to retrofit your solution or technology into a problem posthumously. And that leads to design which doesn't always meet purpose or fulfill a true function. Let's look at some real-world examples and move away from the model or the theory. You guys are all familiar with the fashion industry. This is my personal world. As introduced, my background is 7 years in Adidas, 10 years in the fast fashion industry. Before that, working for high street brands. And there's one thing that we all know and love about fashion: it enables us to create. And we've built strong, stable business models and economies from that. India, I think, is one such country that is upcoming in manufacturing. We have nations like China who supply and are great exporters of most of our wants and needs in fashion. 20 years ago, we had 400% less clothing than we possess in our wardrobes now. Why? Because of the model of fast fashion. It means we can produce collections and new styles every week. Fast fashion, although it solves the need to create, although it functions from the position of skill, is not, I argue, the healthy, humane design. Why? Landfill. We have fashion mounds. After 20 years and 400% more garments in wardrobes, where do those garments go when you're regularly changing, each week purchasing a new product? Landfill. And as much as China, in this example, is the great exporter of beautiful products that we love, it is also a great importer of foreign waste. That is until 2018, when with little notice, China banned foreign waste importation. And China went from importing 600,000 metric tons of foreign plastic waste in 2016 to importing 23,000 metric tons in 2018. That's a phenomenal reduction. And all of a sudden, the value chain of the fashion industry was asking itself, where do we put this waste? So do you go to neighboring countries? Let's look at the APAC region. Indonesia, recently in the news for sending back waste and actually having talks of war with Canada if this waste was not accepted. Other countries in the region, like Vietnam or Thailand, are also talking of introducing new legislative measures to control this importation of waste. This model has not been sustainable. If we can't landfill the waste, maybe we can sell it off as second-hand clothes to economies and regions like the continent of Africa, which has historically been the receiving continent for most of the second-hand clothing of the fashion industry. But again, there's a changing tide. Countries like Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda have decided to ban the importation of second-hand garments. What does it mean? We don't know where those clothes are going to go. But those nations are beginning to change their perception, are beginning to protect their borders, protect their textile industries, which leaves the question, where does all this waste go? And in my role within Adidas, this is the question which we had been asking. Where do you look to for inspiration? When seeking humanity, when looking at creation, sometimes it's best to look at what is around you. There is a natural order, and there are design principles that exist in nature that we ought to sometimes imitate. And oftentimes, as humans, functioning from the skill and technology, we have functioned out of harmony without nature. Let's look at a simple apple tree. When a fruit fills the tree and we pick and eat, there is always an abundance and an excess of fruit. This abundance and excess drops to the floor, rots, decomposes, gives its nutrients back to that soil, gives its nutrients back to the roots of the tree, enabling new fruit to come again the following year. What if we could do the same for fashion? This is the mindset that enables humane design, beginning with the problem in mind. So I'm here to speak about a real-time example which I developed and led from the technical perspective, creating the materials together with the team that led to the solution that is called Futurecraft Loop. In my role within Adidas, I developed the materials which are made from one polymer that enable a shoe that is fully recyclable. I also led the development for the process of recycling, transforming the value chain of the fashion industry from a linear model into a circular model. From a limited perspective where brand has influence only in the middle to creating a whole new value chain, which indeed spanned from raw material to recycling and recreation of new material. In the picture on the screen, you can see a pair of shoes in the middle, which I'm also wearing, as well as the key components that enabled that shoe to be. The key is that this shoe is made from one polymer. There is no glue, there are no mixed materials. And by using this model, we have been able to create a shoe that can be recycled to be applied back into another product, which is a shoe or other Adidas product. In this short clip, which I've just condensed for the sake of time, you will see the recycling process of the shoe. And what you see there is obviously me sitting at a table. The shoe I'm holding in my hand is a shoe which was developed in 2017 in the proof of concept phase. That meant we produced 50 pairs of shoes, and this was when this was still a real ambition and very small team, which was comprised mostly of myself and two other colleagues in Asia. We were able to prove that we closed the loop. The shoe you see in the background with the green film on the table, wherever you see green, that was made from those 50 shoes that were worn and recycled. This was 2017. 2019, April. In New York, we launched the shoes which I'm wearing, which are Generation 1 shoes, to 200 select people who had the opportunity to wear these shoes and bring them back so that we could recycle them. And we did. In Q2 of this year, we recycled those Generation 1 shoes, and I can already tell you firsthand that those shoes have now been applied into new shoes, which will be made available towards the end of the year. This is the only shoe I know that you can put in a grinding machine and then you get the chance to be able to apply it back into another shoe. You're seeing real time a small shot from a documentary that's also available on YouTube, so feel free to go and look at it, that shows the process and that shows the journey that we have gone through to enable this circular model. But how did we do it? Because it's less about the technology and more about the process. The process was about beginning with the end in mind. I want to take you back to that model which I showed when considering what is humanizing design, what is humane design, and what is our individual role in creating and developing products. When we start with solutions, when we begin with the end in mind, when we use that vision as the filter through which every decision is made, and we don't compromise, we can indeed begin to realize solutions such as these. But this is really just a small drop in the ocean. At the beginning, I talked about 150 billion pieces of garments which are produced per annum in the fashion industry. I talked about 400% of clothing ownership in each of our individual wardrobes compared to 20 years ago. I talked about how nations are changing their attitudes to how waste is shared out globally, how Indonesia is closing its borders, how China is closing its borders, because all these nations realize the importance of managing their environment sustainably. And it's right. There should be a global shift. It should not be that we consume irresponsibly and pass off that waste onto another part of the world to deal with. It's not sustainable. So, I've talked about one real-time model, which is based from my experience. I'd like to broaden that out a little bit and talk about some of the topics which are going on in the industry today. I'm here representing technology, I'm here representing the brand, and I'm here representing my work, which I've led in the last few years. I'm also here to talk about the mindset which we engage when going through that. And as engineers and as designers and technologists, we tend to get excited with the technology. And sometimes, not meaning to, we start again from that position of skill as opposed to service and solution. So let's talk about some of these trends: artificial intelligence, automation, autonomous driving, and. In general, I would say, my observation is there is a sense of concern over the role which we play as humans in this future. Will there be designers if there is machine learning and AI? Will I still have a job in 20 years' time? Will this industry still exist? And I think when we approach this type of conversation from the position of looking at the technology, we lose sight of humane design, which means we lose sight of the most important thing, us. We are the only creatures in this earth that can create, that can shape a future, that can choose and exercise immense power and will to realize new realities. And if that remains true, then I would say these technologies, when used in the right way, are simply tools to solve world problems. Speaking of world problems, I took the liberty of looking on the World Economic Forum website and picking out from their survey in 2017, top 10 global risks that we currently face. Even though this survey was done a few years ago, actually the topics remain the same. So I think with Futurecraft Loop and the work which I've been a part of, you could definitely say number one is potentially addressed. Because for sure, we're handling the way in which we handle product. We are reducing product which goes into landfill. We are reducing amount of incinerated product. That definitely has a positive impact on climate. That has a positive impact on land, which could enable more farming when we transform those landfills. So there's a lot of things that this solution immediately touches to. But let's look beyond a pair of shoes and look to the people in this room. As a challenge, I would actually like to leave you with this. Consider if you have ever designed from this perspective. Consider if you have ever created technology from this perspective. Consider if you have ever thought about which technologies do we currently have, or do you have still in you that you have not yet shared with the world that could solve one or more of these problems? An interesting problem I'd like to touch on, which is not fully captured there, except on point 7, is water usage and water availability and scarcity. I think some of these problems have typically been associated with developing economies. Interesting is water scarcity is a global topic and is actually projected to be more prevalent within the Western Hemisphere just as much as other parts of the world. And manufacturers, developers, designers, companies of immense scale already are feeling the pinch from governments who are putting measures to say you may build, but only if you can control the water. There's a cap of water usage. That is an interesting space which we are entering into, and it is indeed a global risk. So how can you design to solve this? To wrap up and to share my last words, I'd like to share something which is a bit personal and also an interest of mine. I enjoy poetry. As a creative person, I guess it's quite fitting. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Some of you may recognize that that is the last few lines from the poem written by Robert Frost, and I think it is a very relevant phrase which captures the time which we are in, and indeed what it means to be humane in design. It is a matter of choice. It is a matter of decision. It is a matter of making a standard and filtering decisions through that lens. And before I close, I would like to share with you advice which my father regularly has given me. Choose well. Thank you.